Everything went squirrely, absolutely squirrely, and all the lights came on, and it all happened instantly.
On April 7, 2026, Russia said something on the moon that Russia has never said before. The exact word was sovereign, souveraigne, and the moment it was spoken, the foundation of international space law cracked. But here is what the headlines are getting wrong. This claim did not come from Vladimir Putin. It did not come from the Kremlin. It did not come from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It came from Sergei Chernyshev, Vice President of the Russian Academy of Sciences, during a presentation on a 700 billion ruble federal space program. And NASA was not shocked. Administrator Jared Isaacman's response was measured, strategic, and focused on accelerating American contracting, not expressing institutional panic. So today we walk through the exact verbatim Russian claim and its translation, the 1967 treaty it just violated, why this matters for Artemis, and why the Bogota Declaration of 1976 is the historical precedent that tells us exactly how this ends. This is episode 71. Drop a rocket emoji in the comments if you want the facts, not the panic. The exact Russian claim. The claim emerged during a formal meeting of the Presidium of the Russian Academy of Sciences, a body deeply integrated with the Russian state. The speaker was academician Sergei Chernyshev, vice president of the Academy and head of the Zhukovsky Central Aerohydrodynamic Institute. He was outlining the architecture of the Space Science Federal Project. Here is exactly what he said, translated to English. Open quote. The Moon program will allow Russia to remain among the leading space powers actively exploring the Moon. It will provide new knowledge and technologies in Moon exploration research, and ultimately, it will allow for the allocation of sovereign territories of Russia on the surface of the Moon. End quote. The Russian word he used is souveraineté territoriae, sovereign territories, not safety zones, not zones of interest, not operational regions. The United States and its allies deliberately use that softer terminology inside the Artemis Accords framework. Russia just discarded that entire diplomatic convention. Academician Anatoly Petrukovich, director of the Space Research Institute, provided the financial backing. 700 billion rubles, approximately $7.5 billion US, for this lunar project through 2036, drawn from a broader 4.4 trillion ruble national space program. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty. If you want more breaking space industry coverage like this, now is the moment. 98% of people watching are not subscribed. Fix that. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and let us continue. To understand why Chernyshev's single word fractures international law, you need Article 2 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. The treaty was opened for signature in Washington, London, and Moscow on January 27, 1967. The Soviet Union was one of the three original depository governments. The Russian Federation, as the recognized successor state, is legally bound as a primary signatory. Here is what Article 2 says, open quote, "Outer space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means." End quote. That clause was written specifically to prevent what Russia just proposed. And here is the irony. For 50 years, Moscow was the strictest interpreter of this treaty. Soviet and Russian diplomats used Article 2 as a weapon against American commercial space mining proposals, against private property initiatives, against orbital real estate frameworks. Russia was the international community's most aggressive defender of the non-appropriation principle. In April 2026, Russia became the first nuclear-armed space power to publicly propose breaking it. The competing framework. The United States' response to the treaty's ambiguities was the Artemis Accords, signed in October 2020, not a binding treaty. A set of bilateral political principles designed to govern civil exploration and commercial resource extraction. By January 2026, Oman became the 61st signatory, joining Australia, Canada, Japan, the United Kingdom, and dozens of others. The accords include a contested provision allowing temporary safety zones around hardware, habitats, and mining operations. Signatory nations must respect each other's zones while maintaining theoretical free access. That is the American legal position. Commercial extraction is permitted. Territorial annexation is not. Russia and China have both refused to sign. Russia rejected the accords as an illegitimate American-led mechanism. China was blocked by the Wolf Amendment. In 2021, the two countries countered with the International Lunar Research Station, or ILRS, targeting a basic automated lunar surface station by 2035 powered by a joint Sino-Russian nuclear reactor. The coalition now includes 13 nations: China, Russia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Egypt, Nicaragua, Serbia, Pakistan, South Africa, Thailand, Venezuela, Kazakhstan, Senegal. Most have minimal space launch capability. The bloc's purpose is political legitimacy, not operational capacity. And for 5 years, Russia and China consistently criticized the Artemis Accord safety zones as creeping de facto sovereignty. Now Russia is explicitly claiming the thing it accused the United States of claiming implicitly. That hypocrisy is not accidental. It is a calculated escalation. Why now? Here is the uncomfortable truth underneath the claim. Russia is making this declaration precisely because it cannot compete on hardware. In August 2023, the Luna 25 lander crashed violently into the lunar surface due to a propulsion control unit malfunction. The first Soviet-era successor mission in nearly 50 years, destroyed on impact. Russia's 2023 space budget was just $3.41 billion. China's was $14.15 billion. The current Russian lunar roadmap is a cascade of delays. Luna 26, the polar orbiter, slipped to late 2028, with analysts calling a further delay to 2029 practically inevitable. Luna 27A and 27B are officially scheduled for 2029 and 2030. Luna 28, the sample return, has slipped to 2036. That is a distant paper concept. Unable to compete unilaterally on hardware, Russia has escalated on legal and rhetorical ground instead, tethering its long-term survival to China's industrial capacity. Chernyshev's sovereignty claim is not confidence. It is compensation. The U.S. response. The American response is where the headlines got this most wrong. NASA was not shocked. The agency's public posture was deliberately calibrated and strategic. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, confirmed by the Senate in December 2025, addressed the competitive landscape on April 10th, just days after Chernyshev's statement. Open quote, "We're back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon. This is just the beginning." End quote. No mention of sovereign territories, no direct response to Russia. He went further in a separate interview about the commercial contracting landscape between SpaceX and Blue Origin. Open quote. "I don't think it was lost on either vendor that whichever lander was available first to ensure that America achieves its strategic objectives on the moon is the one we were going to go with." End quote. That is the American play. Isaacman reframed a potential diplomatic crisis into commercial pressure on SpaceX and Blue Origin. And on April 1st, just before the Russian statement, President Donald Trump set the broader posture. The United States, quote, "does not just compete, it dominates," end quote, in space exploration. On April 17th, United States Representative to United Nations COPUOS, Caitlin Poling, reaffirmed the American legal position. Outer space is not subject to national appropriation, but resource extraction is permitted. That is the bright line. That is what Russia just crossed. The enforcement problem. Here is the question everyone is asking. Can Russia actually enforce a sovereign claim on the moon? The legal answer is no. The practical answer is terrifying. The United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space operates strictly on consensus. It has no enforcement mechanism, no police force, no binding arbitral authority. If Russia physically lands hardware on the lunar South Pole and declares a sovereign exclusion zone around a nuclear reactor, there is no global authority equipped to dismantle it. The Artemis Accords have the same problem. Section 13 explicitly states they do not fall under Article 102 of the United Nations Charter. They are political commitments, not enforceable treaties. Both frameworks rely on good faith compliance from parties that have already demonstrated they will break good faith norms when it serves them. Space law experts, including Franz von der Dunk and Henry Hertzfeld, have warned for years that strict prohibitions on ownership, combined with no enforcement mechanism, create an incentive for de facto sovereignty through physical occupation. The first nation to land, build, and refuse to leave wins the territory. As one contemporary analyst put it, quote, "Like in Antarctica, the rules are defined by whoever gets there first and stays," end quote. The Bogota Declaration precedent. The historical precedent for what Russia just did is the Bogota Declaration of 1976. 8 equatorial nations, including Colombia, Ecuador, Kenya, and Indonesia, collectively asserted absolute sovereign territorial rights over the segments of geostationary orbit directly above their borders. They argued the orbit was an extension of their airspace, not outer space, and therefore exempt from the Outer Space Treaty. The Bogota Declaration failed completely. The United States and the Soviet Union flatly rejected it. Satellites continued to be placed in geostationary orbit through standard International Telecommunication Union allocation mechanisms. The equatorial nations never successfully enforced their claim because they lacked launch infrastructure, aerospace engineering, and orbital weaponry. They had the rhetoric. They did not have the hardware. The 1976 claim and the 2026 claim are legally identical and practically opposite. Russia has vast aerospace and military infrastructure capable of physical domain denial. If Russia deploys a nuclear power plant on the lunar surface with automated robotic defense systems, a diplomatic rejection at the United Nations will not be sufficient to dislodge them. The Bogota Declaration failed because the claimants could not back up the rhetoric. Russia can. That is the entire difference. The SpaceX Pressure. The most immediate consequence of this declaration is not geopolitical, it is contractual. SpaceX holds vital contracts exceeding $4 billion for the Starship human landing system. Those contracts were always a national priority. After April 7th, they became a matter of supreme national security. Artemis 3 is now scheduled as a low Earth orbit test flight in 2027. Artemis 4, currently scheduled for 2028, is the next opportunity for an American crewed lunar landing. Both target the lunar South Pole. That is the single most contested piece of real estate in the solar system, because the permanently shadowed craters there hold ancient water ice, the most critical logistical resource for sustained human presence and in-situ rocket propellant production. If Russia declares a sovereign exclusion zone over prime South Pole landing sites in advance of its 2035 ILRS base, NASA faces an impossible choice. Tacitly recognize the illegal claim by avoiding the optimal terrain, or land astronauts inside a contested zone and provoke an unprecedented diplomatic crisis. Isaacman's framing is already pointing toward the second option. That is the pressure SpaceX now operates under. Ship the Starship HLS on time or concede the South Pole.